Welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. Now, this is a show all about helping you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, today I am chatting with Friedrich Schwandt from ECDB about getting the most out of our e-commerce data. Yes, we're going to look at numbers and insights from the markets and all kinds of things like that. So grab your notebooks, grab your pens, because you are going to want to take some notes from this conversation, I have no doubt. But of course, if you are subscribed to our newsletter, well, all of that information will be in there and it will come straight to your inbox, of course. And let me just give a big shout out, big warm welcome to you. If you are new to the e-commerce podcast, it's great that you're here with us. If you are not yet subscribed to said newsletter, well, go check it out at ecommercepodcast.net to sign up. And all this sort of stuff, once a week, I just email you some insights, some ideas, some thoughts from the podcast and other bits and bobs. So go check that out at ecommercepodcast.net. We'd love to connect with you there. And it's free. Of course, all the links and all the show notes are also in the podcast app, which you're using to listen to the show. Or if you're one of the people watching on YouTube, then it'll be in the show description. So either way, I'm sure you'll get all the links to everything. Not a problem. Now, let's talk about our guest, Friedrich Schwandt, a numbers enthusiast who turned his passion into a powerhouse. He founded Statista in 2007, transforming it into a global data platform with 13 offices and over 1,400 employees and partnerships with media giants like Forbes and the Financial Times. In 2022, he launched ECDB, a specialist database designed to empower businesses with the data they need to thrive in the fast-paced world of e-commerce. Oh, yes. Friedrich, great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. How are we doing today, sir?
Absolutely fine. Looking outside, I'm here from Hamburg. We have rainy weather, as we always have. Like, great.
As we always have in Hamburg, the weather is. I feel your pain, Friedrich, because I live in Liverpool, and Liverpool, I think, is an ancient Greek word for rain. It even has the word pool in its name, so it should be a bit of a clue.
But you had a very good coach some time ago.
Mr. Jurgen Klopp, yes, absolutely. He was phenomenal for the football club. But we probably shouldn't talk about Jurgen too much, but he was a genius. I wish I could get him on the e-commerce podcast, not because I think we would talk about anything to do with e-commerce, but I would love to talk to him about his man management skills because he knew how to manage people.
Absolutely. And I think he's extremely intelligent in picking the right club and then promote it. And and he's now back in Germany, and we all wait that he will become, of course, our national coach.
Right. So
then you have at some point when Germany's playing against England, you have two coaches which are actually very close friends.
Oh, okay.
Tuchel.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, won't it? And I really enjoyed. I'm really grateful to Mr. Jurgen Klopp for his time at Liverpool. He obviously did something quite extraordinary. But actually, there is a bit of a link here, isn't there, between Liverpool and what you do? Because one of the things that transformed Liverpool Football Club was their use of statistical data and analysis when choosing players. And if you've never seen, I don't know if you've seen it, Friedrich, the movie Moneyball, I think Brad Pitt is in it.
One of the greatest movies.
Yes.
One of the greatest movies. And sorry, well played, by the way. It's difficult from Liverpool to get to statistics, but 100%. If you remember, basically the second actor, not Brad Pitt, but basically his assistant, I get his name in a second. He studied economics and basically from there learned how to play how to develop Moneyball, and it's one of the best movies.
Yeah, it's a fascinating film, and if you've not seen it, do watch it because, like you say, he uses the data to analyze players. But this, I think, was in the baseball leagues, wasn't it, over in the States that they started to do this?
Absolutely.
And the link here is in the film, is the character John Henry, who owns the Boston Red Sox, who tried to get the data analysis into the Boston Red Sox because it was working so well. John Henry, of course, owns Liverpool. And so that was the very tenuous link between Liverpool and statistics. It made sense in my head. So I'm curious, for you, how did you get started in the numbers game? I mean, was that you did economics at university, or was there a different route?
I did economics at university, then basically worked as a consultant for some time. And I don't know many consultants, but every consultant around 35 to 40 has a life crisis. It's very clear. It is what I'm doing here. Is it really worth doing anything? How can I really change something? And I had the same. And so I decided, listen, I have to start my own company. And 2007, honestly, it was much easier than now. And then it's interesting. When you announce to other people, I want to start now my own company, you realize you're not good at many things. Because first I said, oh, shall I have a fashion label? And if you see me, basically, my tailor is called Uniqlo. So fashion is not the thing. Then I thought about a coffee chain, etc., etc. And you come down, there are only 2-3 things where you're really passionate about. And for me, it was always data and numbers. There I had the right feeling. I could 100% tell you what, in which way companies, consultants, etc., would use it, what data is relevant or not. And I think if you basically have a very good feeling for your customers, then you're at the right business. And for us, and it was interesting. And then we started it and launched it. And I remember the first 5 years, people asked, who needs statistics? Who would care? And why are you doing this? And honestly, the first 5 years were very, very difficult. And then by a miracle and thanks to God, Google, actually everything turned in the right direction.
Thanks to Google. So many businesses will have the same statement. Yeah, thanks to Google, we actually started to get found, which is a beautiful thing. So what is it about data? What is it about numbers that really drives you? Because there aren't many people that I've met that get excited by numbers. We all know we need the right numbers. We all know we need metrics, but there aren't many people that get excited about them. So I'm curious why you do.
Matt, I think you're wrong. Sorry, I wouldn't say that, but I do believe if you think about an article you read, any kind of newspaper article. When you start, maybe after the second or third sentence, you say, heard it all, know where it's going. And then you see there some charts in there. And you quite often will end up with the charts because they say basically with 2 numbers what this whole article will tell you.
Yep.
Or on the other way around, of course you can lie with statistics, and I don't have to quote Churchill, but nevertheless, I think there's so much more truth in numbers than there really is in many texts and other things. So what is, and it's really a side discussion, but what's really interesting for us, especially during the elections in the US, we become at some point extremely popular. And why is it? Because people are so fed up with either whatever the media name is, the liberal media or the right-wing media or whatever. So people look really just for facts. And then they very often come to our platform and say, okay, these are the facts. And then somehow they feel it is almost, it doesn't belong to one side or the other side. So people are excited about numbers. And in many ways, do I feel that numbers is everything and you can run a good business just with numbers? Of course not. I mean, I do believe you need the numbers as a foundation and then the rest is execution. But for a foundation and for some kind of, or sometimes you have a feeling for it and just see, oh, wow, it is so different. For instance, can I expand now? Let's go to e-commerce. Can I expand to Ireland? Is this market big enough? Should I go into product segments which are next to mine? I'm basically focusing on, I don't know, beauty products. What are the next categories I can address? So I do believe there is actually quite a lot in favor for numbers. Surprising that it comes out of my mouth, you know.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you bring this up, because take something like market size. Like, should I go into the Irish market was the example that you gave. How big is the market over there? I think everybody intuitively knows to ask that question. But how do you find out the answer? Because this is where I think maybe sometimes people should, it's like, where do we go? Can I just type into Google, is the Irish market okay for my business, whatever that business is?
Yeah.
Where do I start? Because I think people don't know where to start where data is concerned.
And of course, my first answer is very much surprising. Therefore, we started this company called ECDB.com, just because people have always problems to remember 4 letters. I mean, it is like IMDB or BCG, whatever they mean. Just to remember, it's basically short for e-commerce database, ECDB. But there you find actually all the numbers about the retailers. What is their revenue? What is the monthly change of their revenue? What is the average order value? What is the frequency shoppers buy there? How much traffic do they have? And what is the product mix? And down to companies which have up to more than 1 million in revenues per year. So really small companies, and all the marketplaces. And you find as well all the product categories for each country. So how big, back to Ireland, how big is the beer market in Ireland? How big is the beauty market in Ireland? How much is it growing? And what are the 3 companies in this market? And I do believe that helps a lot for that answers a couple of questions. Let's assume you have grown in September by 5%. Then always the question is 5% good or bad? We had a couple of holidays, bank holidays, so maybe that's excellent or not. So of course you need always a benchmark. A, how was the market growth overall in my segment? And B, have my 3 competitors grown more or not? And I think for that, it helps you very much to position and come to the conclusion, oh, I do have a topic. Oh no, actually it's great. I can relax. For once, actually a month was really good.
Hey, it's fascinating, isn't it? I'm curious how you get that data, because this has always intrigued me. You know, I'm sure you, and I don't want you to spill any, IP secrets and all that sort of stuff. But I guess how would I have confidence? Maybe a better question, in the data that you provide. Is this from readily accessible data, or is this agreements you have with companies? I'm really curious where you get it from.
Sure. Let's start with it, because we try to solve a problem. So first I have to describe the problem. And the problem indeed is, as you said, roughly 5% of all the retailers are stock listed. And not more. I mean, 5% are stock listed. They publish some kind of information. We come to it in a second. Or the others, in general, they don't publish information. So it is not the real data we just collect and basically publish. What we do is we try to estimate the market data. Now, how do we do that? There's a couple of sources in lingo for databases. They're called alternative data sources, but actually it's very simple. The most important one is called transaction data. So you can buy basically for all relevant countries, on a single item, credit card transaction, debit card transaction, bank transaction. So you don't know Matt, actually, a person bought at this point at bike.com for so many pounds something.
Right.
And basically we analyze overall around 1 billion of these transactions per month.
Holy moly.
So that's a lot. That's roughly 2 to 3% of all the transactions worldwide. Now, will this analysis give me directly the answer? Absolutely not. Think of it as the raw oil. I mean, something extremely dirty, extremely biased. And what we do is then cleaning, matching, and estimating, because people use, so we don't have the same amount of PayPal data than we have credit card data, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the fun part, right? I mean, in a positive way, otherwise everybody could copy us. The dirtier the oil is, the more you have your own IP. But that is the basis. We, in addition, crawl quite a lot of websites that help us for the product mix. We use quite a lot of clickstream data. It's called. It's basically kind of traffic data. It is the product which goes into the traffic data.
Wow,
that helps. And think basically, if you love data and if you love to play around with it, and there are people nowadays, they're called data scientists. For them, it is basically heaven. It is honestly the greatest place on earth to play around with data, because there are very few other places where you can do as much as we with all the data points.
That's really interesting.
And if I may say, now the next question, but Friedrich, is the data correct and right? There is no truth when it comes to data. And now I contradict myself in a little bit. Almost everything is an estimate. I mean, if you want to know what we project the election in the US, we don't know yet. It's an estimate, and et cetera, et cetera. I would even go so far, but then many people would say the revenue of Apple, which some people call real data, I call, even if it's published by Apple, is an estimate, because if you ever worked in controlling, there's so many things you could change, et cetera.
There's no way. Yeah. It's interesting. I guess I'd never thought about this idea of looking at credit card data, which makes a lot of sense now you've said it, because every e-commerce transaction has a credit card or a debit card associated.
A credit card or a debit card, or you have e-wallets. They're called PayPal, Apple Pay, etc.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is really fascinating. Different countries are different. In Germany, you still have quite a lot of bank transfers. By far more. Germany is very conservative when it comes to money, far more than you have it, for instance, in the UK. But so you do have some basis you can work on. And almost like similar to surveys, if you do normally an online survey, you get quite a lot of young people who will answer and quite a lot of old people who will answer. But you don't have as many people around 35. And so what you do is then you weight the answer. So and we do exactly the same. We have more credit card data and debit card data and a little bit less of e-wallets, but then we change it in order to get the right average order value, frequency of shopping, etc.
Yeah. That's very clever. Very clever. How can I? I'm just thinking about maybe I'm just starting out in e-commerce. You know, backing yourself. You know, back in, was it 2007? You decided I'm going to start my own business.
Yeah.
Somebody's listening to the show and they're thinking, I'm going to start my own e-commerce business. I quite like beauty as an example. I think you mentioned. Where would they start? I mean, they could obviously go to your site. What sort of things should they be looking for? What sort of numbers would make sense?
Okay, let's start with beauty. Then I would first say beauty is such a big topic, and of course, if you want to go in, I mean, we both are first of all expert when it comes to beauty. Just that the people listeners know. I mean, there couldn't be two people which are more expert on this topic. So.
Excellent. That's totally true. The irony here, Friedrich, is I actually, until 2 years ago when I sold the business, owned quite a big beauty e-commerce website. But, I'm actually 86. Yeah.
Sorry for that. And then, by the way, just as a side note, there are two founders, me and the one who does all the work. And the one who does all the work had... next to this business, a major e-commerce business, which had the original name of Pink Milk. And then he grew the business to 15 million. And then after Corona had, as so many other people, problems and basically closed it. And I think for us, it is so you learn more. What I want to say is, for a certain sector, once you failed, than once you were successful.
Yeah.
And for us, it's really helpful to know that he knows basically at what number I should look and what's relevant, which KPIs we want to have, etc., etc. Now, coming back to the original question, first of all, I would do a more of a segmentation. Yeah, big beauty is too big, and of course we have to split it in different sectors. Next one is, of course, you define: is it just for the UK, or do I want to look at a broader picture? Then, indeed, if you're young, you can. I'm sorry, our account costs roughly 10,000, so probably you wouldn't have the money. You said, "Listen, I have to save that." Interestingly, us, and I would say even our competitors, everyone uses more and more content marketing, which is another way of saying they publish quite a lot of free content where you can find some kind of segmentations. And typically that is, I feel, a very, very good starting point for, especially if you speak about the smaller companies. Sure. Then the second one is yes, you can go to the statistical offices, and yes, they have some kind of information. I always feel they're a little bit outdated. You do have some e-commerce association, and they do publish a little bit on the sector. The more you get specialized, the more I feel that is not good enough. And then probably, again, if you can't afford it, universities sometimes have access to the good tools. Try basically to find your half legal, half illegal way to university libraries and get there some information.
Yeah, it's really, it's really. I have a son who's at university at the moment, and I've on occasions I've emailed him and said, I need you to go to the library, and I want you to do a little bit of research. He's like, Dad, that's nothing to do with my degree, and I'm like, I don't care. I just need you to go and test this for me, and
absolutely,
because they have access to that.
I have a son who studies actually in the UK. And I do the same, especially if I want to look at competitors. It's very helpful.
Universities are useful for something. Let's just put it that way. We could wax lyrical about that. So obviously, I mean, your system. Obviously, you have to invest in that to get the data out of it and the value out of it, which I appreciate. What are some of the surprising things that you're seeing in that data at the moment? I know that, I mean, it's a wide question because there's so much data, Friedrich, but I'm thinking in the e-commerce sector, have you seen anything that's surprising, perhaps?
They are, of course, on a daily basis surprising. Let's first start. If you talk for the moment to e-commerce shops in the UK or in Germany, I would say they give the impression that overall they reach some kind of local optimum. You know, it's not exploding anymore and seeing that. And I thought, just if you look at so many other markets, you still see how much growth is there. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we complain it is not growing. I mean, e-commerce in total is growing, if I remember correctly, worldwide, 8-9%. I mean, other sectors would kill for these kind of numbers.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's surprising to see how much is happening. Then another thing which is surprising is everyone learned, of course, we know that our three top e-commerce markets, number one, China, much, much bigger than the US. Number two, the US. Number three, by the way, the UK.
Go Britain.
Yes.
Like that. Bronze medal.
It's still, bronze apparently is better than silver. Silver is you're the loser, bronze is the, but again, so that is very interesting. But now about China, the biggest market, we all learned it is totally dominated by marketplaces, correct?
Yeah.
Interesting is if you look at all the traditional marketplaces right now, they're losing. They're losing extremely.
Okay.
Against one phenomenon, and that is TikTok, or the name, I think that has a different name, but social shopping becomes more and more relevant in in China. It's exploding TikTok basically in the China. Contrary to the US, if we look at the TikTok shop in the US, we heard, they're growing, but they do have more problems because they have a slightly different approach. But I think that is interesting. Or something else, and then I stop. We're all familiar with Shane and Temu. And Shane and Temu, I hope my German pronunciation is not.
Yep.
And of course, always the question is, Shane, is the average order value not extremely small because it's sort of basically a shop focusing on pricing? Interestingly enough, it's not. It has an average order value of, if I remember correctly, 75 in pounds, 68 pounds per order, which is for the sector actually quite high. So something which people always say, it's just cheap and they don't pay any taxes, etc., etc. But there's more to it. There is actually some innovation taking place within these two companies.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I'm really intrigued about the TikTok discovery, for want of a better expression. And I'm curious, are you finding that people are spending less on TikTok than they were maybe through the marketplaces, or are they spending more or higher on TikTok than they were through the marketplaces, or is it about the same?
For the moment, you see that it is slightly lower. And that is because obviously the main shoppers are relatively young on the TikTok shop, and because the budget constraints they have, although they overall use e-commerce more, but they have by far more budget constraints. So you see that the TikTok shop is much lower than marketplaces. But what you see is for the short time frame, and as you know, we compare here a little. In the US, they have a different market entry strategy than in China. So huge generalization, but nevertheless, you see lower but growing.
Which is about what I expected, but I thank you for clarifying. Do you see trends in TikTok shop here in the UK?
It is not, so for a trend. How many months is it now on the market?
Oh, not many. I think it's less than a year still, isn't it?
Correct. I think we talk about 6 months. And for a proper trend, so that I can rely on the data, give me 12 months. Sorry for that. I know it's a bit of a spoiler, but I feel that I need that data.
No, it's a fair point. And actually what it means is TikTok shop is still in its infancy here in the UK.
Right. But
and if you're an early adopter, that's a beautiful thing.
100%. It is basically 100%. If you're that's a good one. Excuse me. I used that, but getting again overexcited. Yes, it is a chance on one hand. We all learned and all discussed that the profitability becomes more important for e-commerce shop than now the last 2-3 years than before. Okay. I have the feeling, and I know a little bit more German shops than the UK shop, but I think it's the same. People say that all the time. And of course, they become a little bit more profitable. They spend a little bit less on search engine advertising, etc. But I don't think that they realize it is by far more a fundamental change than a little bit saving on personal expenditure and OPEX. What do I mean by that is, and correct me if you say, Friedrich, it's so obvious, don't go that way. For a long time, quite a lot of shops had the vision, okay, I spend a lot of money and then I sell it. Not everyone, but many had this. This is gone. And basically there is no market, almost no market anymore in order to sell your e-commerce shop or have an IPO, etc. So if that is true, basically you don't do it anymore for the growth. You really do it only for the profitability. And if that is true again, that means basically all your action should be questioned by, do I believe if I, for instance, use marketplaces, I can really develop a profitable business? And I think not. And please, of course, all your listeners would say, this guy has absolutely no clue. But why do I think that is not the case? Because overall, we know on marketplace, we have more price competition than in the normal life. Then we know Amazon and all their friends are extremely intelligent to introduce retail media. So basically the little bit of margin what left now goes into retail media. So long story short, there is almost zero. And we know Amazon is so clever because I think next to Google God, Amazon is very close to them. Amazon is so close. They will basically drive it to a point where your margin will be zero. Because they can. That means you really have, you see where I'm going? You really have to question by far more your business than you do up till now in order to say, I want to develop a profitable business. And in my opinion, that means two things. You have to rediscover a very good connection with your customers. That they are really yours. They believe in you. They become your fans. They're not just, oh, good price, buy it. And second, and that goes is the same way and just the other way around, you have to develop a brand. And that is interesting because so counterintuitive. I think so much of the marketing spending nowadays goes into directly online marketing. So I generate my lead, I buy my new customer. And I feel maybe that is wrong because I should focus more on I need to have a proper brand people believe in. So I create this fan base.
What fascinates me listening to you talk, Friedrich, is you're a numbers guy and here you are talking about brand. I know. And it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? And I totally get what you're saying about marketplaces. And if your aim is to build a profitable business, then you would avoid marketplaces and focus on building your own brand. I mean, I understand the arguments both ways. I do. And I would say for my own e-com businesses, we are predominantly like 90% of our sales come through our website, 10% through marketplaces.
But that's an exception, as you know.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I'm a believer in this idea that a rising tide floats all boats. And I know that, we get the beauty I have, I suppose, with my products is they're repeatable products, like in the supplement space, for example. So people will buy them on Amazon, then they will come over to the website and look. And so I know that as long as I'm breaking even on that transaction on Amazon, that ultimately I'm okay over here. But if I was just relying on Amazon for profit, it would never happen. It would take way too long 100%. To create profitability.
If a marketplace is basically the channel for new customer acquisition, I agree, and then work on it. But if it's basically for your day-to-day business, I don't think it will work. And even if it works now, be absolutely sure, because of their interest with retail media, they have. I mean, the retail media is almost as profitable as AWS. So they found a way in order to squeeze out the remaining part of the margin.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point. I mean, I have a company, we invest and we acquire e-com businesses. I tend to avoid companies that are heavily reliant on marketplaces for their income for a number of reasons. One is profitability. Two is at any point, Amazon can turn you off just because they want to, and you've got no recourse, right? And so,
by the way, another point if I feel if you focus more on profitability, how you look on existing customers versus new customers changes.
Right.
I believe really the main source for profitability comes out of existing customers. And you should think far more how basically can I develop than what I can do. New customers, which in the past were so important in order to feed all the growth, actually become less important.
It's a real. There's always this sort of tension with new customers and returning customers, and we've found this. Like I know, for example, how many new customers we need every month to reach the growth targets that we have.
Correct.
I also know that out of those new customers we get, a percentage of them will become the returning customers. And so my profitability comes from my returning customers. My future profitability comes from my new customers Otherwise, I won't have returning customers in the future, if that makes sense. And it's this really interesting tension that you have to find. And I was talking with a business that's struggling at the moment, looking at the return customer breakdown. And the trouble is they're not getting in the new customers. That's fallen, but their returning customer rate has fallen by 70% year on year. And when your returning customer rate has fallen by that amount, you've got a fundamental problem, because your customers that know your brand, are not wanting to buy your product, right?
I mean, basically, you should close. I mean, I think I mean, that's a tough decision. But so, long story short, I do believe that when we believe in profitability, it is more than we do right now, and we really have to rethink our entire business.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. It's like, I mean, I do acquire ecom businesses, but I also know that it is, and I've sold ecom businesses, but I know that it's not straightforward. I know that just I'm going to build a business, grow it to 15 million, and then sell it. It's not actually as easy as you think it is.
Yeah.
You've heard a story maybe of a company that's done that, but there's 10,000 stories that didn't happen.
Okay.
And that's what we don't hear, really. And so in the meantime, you've then got to go, well, how do I get this business to grow in such a way that is profitable for me and the lifestyle which I'm in, that makes the most sense for us? And I agree wholeheartedly that actually you cannot over rely on other marketplaces to do that and do that well, unless it's very short-termism. I've seen it work occasionally.
Or unless you have overstock and you use it for that channel, that of course makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's super insightful. I mean, any other insights from the data that you've discovered?
What I think is, what I recommend, because I feel there was, for the last 2 years, the phase of international expansion has stopped a little bit, meaning people talked a lot about it, but if you look now, how many companies are really properly going abroad, and how do they do that? They don't do it that often. And for me, that is, once you found your niche, once you are absolutely sure, it's something which I would always recommend to others. And I do this because not only because of the numbers where you can look and how much more growth is in other markets and basically you can profit from, but as well for my own business. So when we start Statista, typically you start in your own company, but in your own country, but we had 80% of all our revenues were international revenues. And it is so nice because, we all have situations where a market for a country for 1-2 years is basically not growing. And if you basically are international in the same segment, but internationally, then you can focus on other markets, and it helps you so much then to develop that market. And on the other hand, you do learn more from your business if you're international. And then I feel it's the same. So let's not talk about Brexit. That was not really a favor for expanding your e-commerce business. But there's so much more. For instance, if you're specialized on lamps or whatever, then to aggregate and learn from all these local markets, because it is almost like test fields we have everywhere around here in Europe. Does it make sense?
It does. And I would say what you're saying about international markets, I think, is really fascinating, because there are opportunities there. But I think I can only speak for people in Britain. I think Britain got, with Brexit, when that all happened, actually international shipping became a lot harder and a lot more complicated. Trying to send a product from Liverpool to Spain is so much more complicated and so much more difficult than trying to send a product from Liverpool to the US or even to New Zealand. It's further away, but it's just an awful lot easier. And so I think people, I can understand why the international markets fell a little bit. But I'm hoping that we're sort of coming through that and we're growing up a little bit, and there are opportunities there, like you say, internationally, which I think are super, super promising for many e-com businesses.
Plus, obviously, once you buy a business, let's say in the Netherlands, of course, you have your own logistics center there, and you basically can go around all the problems you have. If you ship it directly from the UK, you basically can, because many people want to buy certain product from the UK, and then you can distribute it to there. And again, you learn more for your own business being in the other markets, and it is really on everything, on marketing, on product mix, on sourcing, probably even finding employees, because both in the UK and Germany have the labor market getting more and more difficult, and there are certainly other countries where it's much easier.
Very true. Very good. Very good. Friedrich, listen, I'm aware of time, brother, and I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've got so many more questions. But if people want to reach out to you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to find more about ECDB, what's the best way to do all of those things?
Okay. I would say there are two things. Number one, obviously the website ecdb.com, again, short for e-commerce database like IMDb. And second, reach out via LinkedIn. I do actually like to connect and answer everything. And you find me on Friedrich Schwandt LinkedIn. There's only one. It's a very strange name, so.
Very good. We will, of course, link to Friedrich's very strange name in the show notes. That will be there for you to connect with him on LinkedIn, and obviously check out the company website as well, ECDB. Friedrich, listen, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for answering my questions. Very, very helpful. And I loved the insights around TikTok. I love the insights around marketplaces and international markets. I thought it was all very, very helpful. So super encouraged. Lots of possibilities in my head, which is always a good thing. So thank you. Thank you so much. So there we have it. What a great conversation. Huge thanks again to Friedrich for joining me today. Now be sure to follow the e-commerce podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got some more great conversations lined up. And of course, I don't want you to miss any of them. Why would I? I wouldn't. And in case no one has told you yet today, let me be the first. You are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. I've got to bear it. Friedrich's got to bear it. You've got to bear it as well. Now, the e-commerce podcast is produced by PodJunction. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. Our theme music was written by Josh Edmondson. And as I mentioned, if you'd like to read the transcript, the show notes, and all of that good stuff, you can do a number of things. Check out your podcast app. Check out the website ecommercepodcast.net. And of course, sign up for the newsletter. All amazing places to get it from. But that's it from me. That's it from Friedrich. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.